SEO can be a lot to handle for even the most experienced blogger, and it's easy to get lost in the weeds. The truth is that having quality content is one of the biggest keys to succeeding in SEO. Hi, I'm Liz Stapleton, your host for the Blogger Breakthrough Podcast. Thank you for letting me be part of your day. In this episode, I'm sharing some SEO tips for quality content from blogger and podcaster Ryan Robinson that he shared with us during the 2021 Blogger Breakthrough Summit. Let's hear what he has to say.
On that, publishing truly transformative, excellent, like high quality content that helps real people. I think that's the foundation that you should always have in mind.
Okay. So truly transformational content is easier said than done. So where do you start in deciding what you want to write about? Do you go about it in a very kind of analytical way, or how would you get there?
I think the way that I started versus what I do today is a little different, to be fair.
Okay.
So today I do kind of a mixture of, keyword research and planning based on, market opportunities, blended with also answering reader questions, because I have so many people that ask me super specific things that I realize other people have the same questions. So today I'm kind of a blend, but when I first started out, definitely like very, very narrowly focused on keyword opportunities. So oftentimes that comes from competitor research. So seeing what other people in my space are writing about always gives me inspiration. It doesn't necessarily guarantee like, okay, because Neil Patel's writing about this, that means I should do it too. I think there's a lot of kind of missteps you can make if you're just chasing the competition.
Yeah.
But chances are, if someone who's been doing this for many, many years, they have clearly monetized content, there will be opportunities you can identify just from looking at competitors and, kind of double checking your own keyword research, whether it's using a free tool or something like Ahrefs or Moz. I think those are really, really valuable, and just kind of validating like, all right, there are real people out there searching these things. And I'm very SEO focused, but again, like if there's real people searching on Google, there's also real people talking about it on Facebook, other social networks too. So I think it's kind of a winning combination by thinking through an SEO lens.
Yeah, I think it helps you figure it out, but also you want to write for people, not algorithms.
Sure.
Because that's gonna, if you're writing just for the algorithm, people aren't gonna stay, and it's not gonna do you a lot of good. So going back to kind of keyword opportunities, how do you determine that a keyword is an opportunity?
I'd like to think today that purchase intent kind of drives a lot of my focus when I'm doing keyword research. If you get an article that does really, really well SEO wise, and you get, let's say, 10,000 people to it coming a day, but they all just leave, they don't complete any sort of action for your business, that's arguably not that much of a win, right? Unless you're doing display ads and somehow generating lots of revenue from that. But I don't often advocate for that kind of a route with blogs, or at least most bloggers. So yeah, I like to think through purchase intent. So, whether that's like some sort of course that I want to eventually sell one day, or, a digital book you might be able to offer based on your skills and your expertise, just thinking through like, all right, who's searching for, the term like how to write a blog post? What are some ways that might be monetized, whether it's through recommending affiliate tools, selling your own products, right? Having a podcast that people can subscribe to and you can get sponsors from the podcast. I like to kind of think through before I actually get started in the writing process, like, all right, how can a post like this, doesn't need to be today, but how can it be monetized at some point in time?
Okay. And then what is your writing process? What do you think is kind of the best way to go about creating that transformational content once you kind of settle on the focus of the work?
Yes, this is the $1 million question. I think lots of different writing processes do work for different people, but for me particularly, I always start with a headline. And so I'll kind of approach it with some sort of framing in mind that feels most natural to me. And I always try and gut check that by researching, just doing a Google search, seeing the 10 headlines that come up on the first page often gives you a pretty good insight into what Google's saying the intent of searchers might be. You know, if it's like 10 results that are all talking about top tools for something, then that tells me that you should probably consider following that format for your headline too. But doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way to go, but that often kind of dictates, the headline dictates the structure an article will take for me.
Okay.
And then I'll kind of outline it. I'll do a little competitor research to make sure there's not something I'm completely missing, and to look for opportunities to kind of use my own experience or my own research to backfill holes that I've identified competitors kind of miss. So yeah, from outlining, then, you know, today my process is a little different as far as writing goes than it was a few years ago. I use a couple of good freelance writers that I've worked with for years now, and I'll kind of like take the headline, take the outline, and then I'll kick it over to them, and they'll often generate a first draft that's a couple thousand words, few thousand words, and they get it back to me, and I'm more of an editor who, my gosh, I'm so obsessive about my process. Like I end up doubling or tripling everything I get back from them as far as word count goes. But that's fun.
Okay. So how important is word count? I mean, it depends, I think, on the topic, right? But if you want to kind of touch on that and explain how it relates to whatever you're writing about, I think that'd be helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I tend to be one that really leans into like in-depth, comprehensive, you know, we talked about like transformational earlier. Um, I hesitate to give like a really specific number to people, but I don't tend to publish anything less than like 5,000 words on my site these days. For the most part, sometimes there's a little variance. I published a guide to blog marketing recently that was like 12,000 words as the first version that went up, and that's on the really high end, right? But sometimes I'll have something that's sometimes I'll have something that's 2,000 to 3,000 words, but like rarely is it anything less than that.
Okay, gotcha. And then if you're getting articles that are this long, you know, which take time to create to make them good, how often are you publishing? You know, does it, when it comes to sort of SEO, because there's a lot of like talk of you need to publish at least once a week, right, for blogging. When it comes to SEO, quality over quantity, is that fair to say? And how do you decide when you're publishing?
Yeah, I for sure take the approach of quality over quantity today in my process. And to be honest, like for most of the time that I've been blogging, I haven't had like a rigorous schedule of, all right, I need to publish this on this day. It's often kind of just a, how am I feeling about writing today? And if it was a good writing day or a good editing day, like, am I getting something up? I do aim for trying to publish something once a week when I'm like really on my game. But oftentimes I find that even though I aim for once a week, it's more like once every other week or maybe 3 a month. That's kind of what I've realized I'm falling into.
All right, I hope this episode has given you a better idea of why creating high quality content is so important to SEO and what that might look like for you. To hear more amazing SEO tips from Ryan, head over to bloggerbreakthrough.com/podcast deal to get access to the rest of his session and all the other 2021 sessions as well. Be sure to join me next time when we're going to take a look at the very basics of SEO. So if this episode went low over your head, you'll definitely want to check out next week's. I'll catch you then.